What a pleasure. I'm here with a head coach today. Actually, he's the head coach, the CEO, and president of Libro, Steve Bolton. Steve, I really appreciate you coming to get. We know one another a lot of years, right?
Mhm.
But I've had such a respect for you. But I do know, I think you started in Libro sometime in the 80s, if I remember, but you came from the farm. It's circuitous route, I'm sure. But
Yeah,
what's your background a bit there?
yeah. Well, I'll give you the short version. So you're absolutely right, and so thank you for having me, Glenn. So I grew up just 20 minutes west of the city of London in a fairly large cash crop and beef operation. So I'm a country kid. I'm a farm kid.
Mhm.
The and frankly, I would just say I have a passion for agriculture. I have a passion for food, but I don't have a passion to be the one that produces it. So I always wanted to be the guy that supported agriculture. I originally thought I would be a commodities broker, and life took me on a strange journey. Uh, uh, I ended up working for a financial institution for as a first job in 1988, and that's what you're referring to. And that turned into a lifelong career here at the same
Mhm.
company, St. Willibord Community Credit Union, and then Libro Financial Group, and then the latest iteration, Libro Credit Union. Yeah, so it's been a great journey, and I still live in the country. I still live on a farm, and I'm happy to drive from the country to the city every day.
No, that's good. And I think I remember once, I think I was at a Libro event. I think you told me once are you an Ivy graduate? Do I have that right?
Oh man, so I have a few letters behind my name, and quite frankly, to me, none of that matters. It just makes me a better person to engage in some really thoughtful questions. But I am an Ivy grad. I did start my educational career at the University of Windsor, so it was down in Windsor with my Bachelor of Commerce. I took a executive education program in 2000 at Queen's. Got me interested in my MBA through that program. Decided to take the executive MBA program at Ivy. That was 2006, 2007. Great program.
Mhm.
And I also took an advanced agricultural leadership program, which is sponsored by the University of Guelph and a few others. So I have, I think, 4 or 5 schools that send me donation requests on an annual basis, and I'm happy to support every one of them. So.
Yeah. Interesting though. You started in '88, and I started in '86 at the food bank. So I think you and I have kind of roughly, with our organizations, lived through not just a few decades, but some transformations, some
Mhm.
real challenges, sometimes a celebration, real challenging times as well, as I said. But in the process of you going through this and eventually arriving to the point where you're leading and shaping and coaching and moving
Mhm.
Libro down the road, what would you think? I would say for me as a food bank, for instance, the way that the economy has changed in many ways has been our greatest challenge as a food bank. It's actually been an economic challenge. I mean, when I
Mhm.
started, food bank started in a recession in the 80s, right? And
Mhm.
then everything just got worse from there. That's just kind of the way that it was. Every time there was a recession, we never kind of quite came back as a economically as we had
Mhm.
done before. And yet lots of money was being produced, great products were being made, but for some reason things were starting to get away on us. How did you feel about that during your time at tenure at Libro? You're still there, but what do you think has been the greatest challenge in you trying to shape it where it's going?
Yeah, so certainly the economic realities have influenced both you and Libro, and I would say everybody in southwestern Ontario. The one thought that we have here is not even a thought, but when I took over in 2011 is when I was hired to be the next head coach, president, and CEO, and I like anybody that comes into a new role to lead an organization, you're building on top of those that came before you, on the strong foundation that they left. And I absolutely had that opportunity. Jack Smith was my predecessor,
Yeah.
through a combination with uh, United Communities Credit Union. I view Jim Lynn as a bit of a predecessor. He was the CEO at United Communities Credit Union. But there's always been change in the environment, and the one thing that I think about a lot is, and maybe it frustrates me a little bit, is uh, economically when we think about microcosm. So the city of London, or the city of Windsor, or the city of St. Thomas, or Kitchener Waterloo, or Grand Benders, all the places that we serve. We don't think about the area regionally enough, in my view. And so we started talking about that and trying to change the dial about the fact that we're all interconnected in this broader region called Southwestern Ontario. And what's good for London is good for St. Thomas, is good for me 20 minutes outside of the city in a small community, because we're interdependent on each other. You're right. There has been a lot of economic change over time. The industry that serves us today is not the industry that served us in the late 80s. Ford is gone out of, between here and St. Thomas. Amazon is building there. And just that example, I hadn't thought of it until now, is pretty massive, from a service organization delivering retail goods from a large manufacturer of automobiles. So I think change will be inevitable. It'll never stop. And the one thing that doesn't change, in my view, is food. As a society, we need to eat. And I think sometimes we forget that if it isn't for food and farmers and food production, however that comes, none of us are going to be well off.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, I think, well, what we do in part, our success is partly due to Libro, and I might as well declare that up front. When we moved into the building that we had a number of years ago, which was the old Trudell building, and they were fantastic to us. They were wonderful to us. But it was Libro that helped us. We went to you guys and we just asked for your assistance, your professionalism and other stuff was great. But we all came away from that with no doubt that this was about more than finance, right? There was something behind that, some kind of value behind that we sensed at every turn.
Yeah.
Even when we ran into difficulties, your team would sit down with us, work with us. We worked with Libro on other things as well over time. But I think that that's an important piece to come to. I really do want to talk about food because that's what this is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think I remember from a while ago that I think Libro is the largest credit union in relation to agriculture in Canada. Now that's probably wrong, so I'll let you correct me.
Yeah, so let me just give you an updated Coles notes on Libro, and I don't want to take much time to do it, but you're right. Libro is a financial cooperative, and we're owned by you. As the food bank, if you're a personal member, we're owned by you as a personal member, and there's about 112,000 of you across Southwestern Ontario. That makes us think differently, Glenn. It makes us think differently about how we provide service, what value, the business term value proposition, what value do we provide to you? And quite frankly, as an organization that's owned by its customers, and anybody can join, I want to make that clear, anybody can join Libro. We want to treat you differently, so our focus is to grow prosperity in Southwestern Ontario. It's a why statement. We operate to that why by being epic, bold, inclusive, and accountable. We're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to be inclusive and let everybody in there. We want to be bold in shaping this part of the world through thought leadership, through some of our actions, through supporting the food bank and a lot of other not-for-profit organizations. And we want to make sure, I forgot the first, what was the first one that, I went through the three, but anyways, we just want to make sure that we leave individual owners, we call our customers owners, members owners, better off. And if we make them better off, then the communities that they're part of should be better off. And so it's a hypothesis. I'll report back in 10 years to see if that actually worked. But the focus on caring for you and our other owners based on what your needs are, where you want to go and what's getting in the way is priority number one for us. It's just, we think differently because you own us.
Yeah. So I would just have to say that is 100% true. I am 100% biased. Everything that you said, but I've learned that from experience with Libro over the years, and not just about the food bank, but we've cooperated on other things that Libro has also been part of. And if there's anything that comes from Libro, it's always heart and understanding. There's always the resourcing, the other things that happen. But, normally to hear somebody like you use that kind of tagline, you're going, okay, that's a great business line. That's really good. But it's so true in this community. And I could have 100 people behind me all lining up to say the same thing.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, and we don't take it for granted either.
I know you don't. I
Yeah.
think I said though earlier, are you the largest
Yeah.
union?
So uh, we believe so.
Okay.
So we have. I was just looking at some numbers today for the end of August. We have about 1.3 billion dollars that has been entrusted to us by a segment of the market that is agriculture. It's primary producers in agriculture, and of that 1.3 billion, and we call it portfolio, the majority of that would be in agricultural credits, over $1 billion in loans into the agricultural community in southwestern Ontario. You know, from Windsor, Essex, up through to Haldeman, Norfolk, of course, Middlesex, Lambton, all around us, and that's depositors' money that is being reinvested back into food production. You know, and in a lot of cases, global food production, because these are larger operations. But it goes into the supply of food, and the supply of food, if it's great enough in the world, then frankly, it'd be nice to put you out of business, Glenn. And I,
Understood. Yeah.
that'd be a great goal.
Hmm. So let's talk about food for a second. Can I tell you, perhaps for me, my greatest frustration of the last 36 years being in
Yeah.
food banking is that I tend to, even with this show, we've had the Speaker of the House of Commons on it, various mayors on it. I want to see London within a larger context because I happen to believe the solutions are in the larger context.
Mhm.
You'll have local application, but they really have to be part of something elsewhere. And I really felt like that about food. So, a number of years ago, for instance, this is a good example. And to me, it's a good example of my failure, of even London's failure. We cooperated with some other groups, including the City of London and Libro and the London Community Foundation, to start the Middlesex London Food Policy Council. Now,
Mhm.
Libra was there at the press conference and we started. I remembered that and I remembered the people that were there. It was wonderful. But part of that process was we needed something that would help to define us, a set of encyclopedias or research that we could go to that would give us an assessment of the food situation in the region, not in London.
Mhm.
So it wasn't just about describing food programs or whatever. It was, what do farmers produce? How much of that gets dumped? Where is it sold? All
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. What are the crops? This food assessment is about as thick as this. It was fantastic, and it was from 6, 7 years ago. It
Mhm.
cost a lot of money to produce that. We brought in a food bank as part of that. We brought in somebody from Toronto to produce it, and I'm not sure it's ever been open since. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
driving me kind of crazy. Sorry, I have to be careful here, but it does drive me kind of nuts because even now, as we look at as a community the solutions to our food insecurity problems, they actually largely lie outside of London. And it kind of bothers me because I think although there's so many wonderful programs going on in London and lots of growing happening in London and community gardens and greenhouses and
Mhm.
containers and all those wonderful kind of things, it's still really true that when I look at the food banks, so much of our food has come from the farm fields that are outside of London.
Mhm.
Am I wrong, Steve? You would have a much better read on this, but my view of it is we're not going to get to the bottom of some of these problems until we integrate Middlesex and London in a way, even broader than that,
Mhm.
to Chatham and other places, till we do it in a way in which that whole food system begins to be streamlined and run together. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. The So like anything, individuals go about doing their day-to-day work, and they do it well, and they and
Yeah.
they and they're busy, and they spend a lot of time. And I do know there's a large number of agricultural producers, food producers. You know, Maybe that's a better word than farmers. My mom's been after me for a while to try to change the dial on that.
Okay.
Uh, who are just busy, like super busy. It's not it it's capital intensive to run a profitable farm operation. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of issues with hiring the right talent. There's lots of job opportunities
Yeah,
in
for
this
sure.
segment. More and more, we're relying on foreign workers. Uh, so that group is just busy, and then I know you're busy, and I know the urban farmers that are producing food
Mhm.
are doing their bit, but they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. So creating that forum of awareness for sharing, for how might we come together better, uh, to produce food. I know my brother-in-law, for example, when he was growing tomatoes, periodically would drop a skid of tomatoes off, I think, at your place,
Okay. Yep.
and that might take you as surprise, for cat farms out there, right? I know the reason they did that was they just felt like they wanted to give back and they had a little bit of time to do it. Uh, so trying to crack that, that issue, I think, is tough. Uh, so we just started I shouldn't say started, reconstituted a agricultural advisory committee here at Libro. It's a management committee, and we're inviting in, some of the largest producers that we have of food, mainly to sit here at this board table where I am today and get into their heads around food production in southwestern Ontario. What's going well, what's not going well, what are land prices doing, what are your challenges, how might Libro be a part of solving for those solutions, and and there was a couple things that came out from the first conversation we had. Uh, they can't find enough talent. They can't find enough people to do the work, and so they're reliant more and more on foreign labor.
Yeah.
And so that's just a reality. And I don't, I have my personal views on it. And then the challenges of actually sourcing individuals to actually come and do the work, and housing, everything that goes around that, is a challenge. Those challenges, back to economic change, were not there in the early 80s, in the late 80s, the way they are today. And yet at the same time, you have people working who can't afford to put food on the table and need to supplement their groceries with food bank sources. There's got to be a solution, Glenn. I don't know what it is. I haven't turned my mind to it lately.
Well, when you will, it will be very impressive, I know. But I do, can I ask you,
Yeah.
when we talk about this problem, I just finished interviewing a mayor of the region
Hmm.
last week, and he talked about how 4,000 people come from his area to London, and 4,000 daily, and 4,000 from London go to his area.
Hmm.
But really, there seem to be competitors when they really shouldn't be. There's this harmonization of efforts that should be going on. But when
Absolutely.
you're talking about this larger issue around food, do you find the municipalities or local governments, Reeves, the others, do you find them very open to this because it's obviously helpful to them economically, or do you still think that they're holding back?
No, I think the dial is changing on that regional
Yeah.
view. I absolutely do. I think with enough people talking about it and raising the flag, I won't use a food example, but I'll use an automotive parts manufacturer example. So I remember a news article. Somebody was moving a small plant just from in London to the outskirts of London, so into another municipality, but adding about 3 times the number of employees as they did that.
Mm.
And the article was framed as bad for London. Uh, no, it was great for London.
Mm.
Here's somebody that's actually investing in the future, increasing their the jobs that they have for people to earn a good living. Uh, but the article was, because it's not in the city of London, it was bad. Uh, that stuff drives me nuts. You don't hear of that much anymore. I think we hear that when there's success in a neighboring community, that we're all celebrating that success. When there's success in London, we're celebrating that success. And broadly regionally, which is what I keep having to focus on, because even though I live and work in the city of London, I'm responsible for an organization that is broad across all of
Yeah.
southwestern
Yeah.
Ontario, and I absolutely will not pick one region as being you know the 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 child you love best, right? I
Mm.
won't do it. It's uh you know but I do get pulled into London things a lot more than I do into Windsor Essex, for sure. Yeah, work together, share, cooperate. Food is needed everywhere.
I remember once years ago, Steve, I was an MP and I was at Queen's Park for something, and the deputy treasurer asked me for a meeting.
Mhm,
And so I went in, and I was in opposition. I was just a Liberal MP in opposition, but he asked for the
mhm.
meeting. And so we had lunch together, and he said, "What the hell is wrong with you guys?" Those are his exact words. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Why aren't you guys focusing and working together on your number one asset?" Now, I'll be honest, I was an MP and I did not know what he was talking about. Is it Western? Is it healthcare? You know, all those, and it wasn't. He said, it's food.
Yeah.
Like we sit there as a province and we look at you with all this prime land, right?
Mhm.
If all of you as regions all cooperate together, you would be a powerhouse, not in Canada, but in the world. Why don't you guys do this? And that you would find that the province and the feds would work with you to help to harmonize those efforts. So
Mhm.
that was back during the Great Recession. So we're
Yeah.
talking 2007. Is he right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have some of the best agricultural land in the world, uh,
Yeah.
farmland, food production land.
Yeah.
I looked at some numbers from years ago, and so these will be out of date now. But
Mhm.
we have 4% of the agricultural land in Canada. It's driving, I think at the time, 25% of the gross revenues of farm receipts. You know, we're punching way ahead of our weight class. The war in Ukraine has demonstrated to everybody how fragile the world food supply is. When
Yeah.
one area is pulled out of production or reduced production, it can become a problem.
Yeah.
The But the interconnectivity is so incredibly complex and simple at the same time. Um, uh, it's not easy. So this spring, the farmers, the food producers in Ontario, were very nervous that they wouldn't actually get the supply of nutrients that they would need to feed their crops, so that that crop could feed us. If I could make it really simple, because of the war in Ukraine. And the fertilizer that is coming from there. And I realize there's climate issues with all of that. I'm not gonna say there isn't. Uh, and we need nutrients to feed the plants that feed us. Frankly. So I absolutely agree. I know organizations are doing really good work around not just producing the food, but setting up, value added products. In and around London and Chatham, Kent, Windsor, Essex. They're all looking at food production and not just production, but
Yeah.
value add is a great thing to do. Even the cricket operation,
Yeah.
I think is great and innovative as another protein source to feed the world.
Yeah. That's true. You know, when we have these meetings, I've been to a couple of your meetings. I think you've been to a couple of things that I was at. You see the personalities that all come and they bring their history with them.
Yeah,
Sometimes their baggage, sometimes their gift, sometimes their generosity, sometimes their clarity, which is wonderful. But you look at that, you see those personalities in the room, and you realize this meeting is going to go really on the basis of those personalities. But let's widen that out a bit to organizations. When we look at the food situation in southwestern Ontario, and what does Libro as an organization bring to that discussion? What are its characteristics? I think the farming background, I get all of that. But
mhm.
what is it unique, do you think, to Libro, to your values, to your vision, so on and so forth, that you think that you bring that's particularly unique as we all try to have this discussion? I think I could answer that for myself, but you're the one
Yeah.
who really know. What do you think?
So for us, I would say there's two parts to that answer. So Libro has a competency, a skill set in supporting agriculture.
Yeah.
The primary producer, the food producer, and we're good at it. We have a lot of farm kids, I'll call them.
You're one.
I'm a farm kid too.
Mm.
The Who understand agriculture, who can talk with farmers about where they're at, where they're going, what's getting in the way. But that's really a commercial enterprise part of Libro that does that. It's part of what we do. We build, we help developers build homes and apartment buildings and condominiums as well. We help individuals buy mortgages. So I would put that in that category. Uh, Libro has four pillars that we really focus on. Food accessibility is one,
Oh,
and
interesting. Yeah.
and well, so financial resiliency is another, and housing is one. So think about that, food accessibility. And so when we start defining what does it mean for food accessibility, a pillar that Libra will focus on and have thought leadership on, it's not necessarily all about food production. It can be part of that, but it's about making sure that everybody has adequate food
Mm.
and access to food. And so we're turning our minds more and more to that. So we're working with food distribution
Mm.
places, food banks, others that are involved in that area. We're getting tapped more and more as word gets out that food accessibility is something Libra wants to be part of.
Mhm.
We're building on what we've done with you elsewhere, and and a lot of our granting and sponsorship dollars start to go, into those 4 pillars. Last year, I think it was $1.3 million we put into sponsorships, donations, further support in Southwestern Ontario, and they would go into one of those 4 pillars, food accessibility being one. So some of that is trying to change the narrative. The other thing that we've done that is new to us is we've invested or made a pledge to invest up to $2 million in a venture capital fund that focuses on the intersection of agriculture and technology. And so agriculture is very technology heavy. You might not think it, but farmers are probably the users of some of the best science and technology today. And so this venture capital fund wants to invest in those future companies that are marrying new technologies up with the agricultural production. So doing things better, more efficient, possibly less inputs into production to reduce climate change, greenhouse gas emissions. So there's lots of kind of, stuff that's going on. It's too early for us to really talk about it other than our commitment to do it. And so the $2 million for us is not a gift and not a sponsorship and not a donation. It's a commercial investment in venture capital.
Venture capital.
We will get back. And hopefully we get back with a good return, but also get back with training and expertise around the future of agriculture, and get back with a better understanding of how venture capital works to enable startups who can't get money through the commercial business that Libro does because they just wouldn't qualify, for the benefit of the next generation. So if you and I were talking 10 years from now, I'd be able to tell you a few of those stories, but
yeah,
I'm not sure you'll be sitting in that seat. I'm not sure I'll be sitting in this one in 10 years, but who knows?
Steve, I had Will Heeman on my porch here the other day, and we were talking about things, but one of the things I noticed about him, he's just a kid. And by that, I mean, it's not an insult. He's so enthusiastic about the stuff that he's doing, right? But I realize the farm kid never left him, but it's because he stayed in that field,
Yeah.
right? That sector that he is working in. And I guess that's true of you as well. I guess Libro has permitted you to keep that child alive in you, that farm kid alive in you, and continue to take that enthusiasm to it. I think I sense that in you. Do you? Like, do you feel that's
Oh
true?
yeah, I'm country through and through, and so I actually absolutely love the friends I have, the
Yeah.
people I hang out with, the community that I'm part of in the country. And I played cards with high school friends from 35 years ago. And it's a great evening for me. And then I come here into this job and I hang out with, economic development leaders in the city of London. And I love it and I can do it. I wear many hats, Glenn, but I'm true to myself all the time. I say what I think. I bring those farm values here. I look for solutions. I challenge people. But the passion for food and agriculture runs pretty deep. And quite frankly, in my view, it's something that Libro has always had.
Excels at.
And I would hope Libro will always have into the future as well.
Steve, I was at a meeting not too long ago with some of our board members and mentioned in the speech that if it hadn't been for Libra, we wouldn't be where we were at in our building, which has been so fundamental to everything that we are. Wonderful building. But that was Libro that created that. So I think part of the farm value that people bring in Libro is this idea to reach out, to help others, that is really there. But I could just in my own head, and it's not all that bright, but I could name a whole bunch of other different groups that I know that have been helped along the line by Libro and are still in the game because of Libro. I want to thank you for that. Thank you, board, for that, and your staff and all the others. Thank you for that, Steve. Thanks for being here today. I do think we should talk more, though, in the future, because as this venture piece rolls out, I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
But thank you for staying the kid. I think that's really important to us as a community. And thanks to Libro for all what it's done. It just didn't talk about food or agriculture. It talked about humanity, and you really got that down well. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, let's build. Let's not tear down. Thank you, Glenn, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Steve.